Hola amigos, and welcome back to another episode of La Vida Verde podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Human, here at Finca Vida Verde. My guest today is a very special one to me, my good friend Brockell Briddle. Brockell is the founder of Wanderlust Women, which is a women's travel and retreat company. She's an international yoga teacher, a retreat leader, and she coaches people about all these things. She has also been a member of my touring band, The Human Revolution, since 2005. We're going to have a great conversation. Stay tuned. I hope you enjoy. Brockell Briddle.
Hello.
Welcome to La Vida Verde podcast.
Thank you so much.
It's an honor to have you here.
Thrilled to be here.
Yes, and we're in a new location here. This is our new studio location for the new season. First of all, we just had our epic New Year's event.
Épico.
How was it?
Increíble. Like the best. So much fun. If you didn't come, you have to come next year.
Next year. Monkey Medicine, 4th annual, next year, come. Awesome having you in the band again.
Aw, thank you.
Brockell and I toured together for a lot of years and lived in community together, and then it was like good 10-year break where we just didn't. We were just doing our own things. Life happened. It happens that way.
Yeah.
But why don't we, so I know you really well, but why don't we start with like your history for people who don't know you.
Okay.
This is Brockell Briddle,
Yep.
BR.
BR.
And you're from Kirksville, Missouri.
It's true.
I've been to your family farm. Grew up on a horse farm.
Yeah. Well, we didn't really advertise ourselves as a farm, but yes, we had horses growing up. So I've had horses my whole life. I'm a horse gal, and I grew up in rural Northeast Missouri. Pretty normal rural Northeast Missouri upbringing.
Whoa. Pretty normal rural. You grew up in a Christian puppet troupe.
Okay, I forget about that part of my history.
This is my favorite part about your history.
The funny thing is, I forget about this part of my history, and it's only people who know me really, really, really well who even know about this. Okay, truth be told, my parents were Christian puppeteers when I was young. I grew up in a very religious family, and part of their ministry was, this is funny that we're talking about this, but part of the ministry was that we had a puppet setup. So we literally traveled to churches all through the Midwest, and my parents were like, puppeteering and Bibling all.
So they were like little Jesus puppets and.
Oh yeah, we had like, I can't even remember the Bible story, but like the lion in the jungle.
Lion was David
yeah.
and Goliath.
You should think I should remember these things, but. Some things we have selective memory
Life
about.
moves on. Life moves on.
But, we did a whole, like, Goliath skit and, David in the jungle.
You would tour and do this?
Yeah, they went to all kinds of churches. I was very small, truth be told. I was very young. But my parents went to all kinds of churches through Iowa, Missouri.
Wow.
They did a lot of... Yeah, they
Life
did a lot
on
of
the road.
ministry this way, ministry through puppeteering. And it was back in the days where we had cassette tapes. So they spent all this money like with a sound system, and they had these cassettes, and they had these actually beautiful puppets.
Amazing.
They were like Jim Henson style puppets. They were very good.
Really?
No, we were legit. Yeah, we were legit. So,
and did you
little
puppet?
Interesting piece of my background.
Did you were really young, but did you do the puppets?
I didn't do them professionally like the rest of my family, but my brother was like David, in the skit, and my sister was in the puppet thing. My parents mostly worked at that time, and they had many different ministries that they were a part of, but at that time they really worked with like college students in town, and they kind of created the puppet program around as a ministry through, college students and things. So
amazing. And
my parents are creative.
You went from ministry, puppet ministry, to the Human Revolution ministry.
Exactly.
Which is a whole nother, we'll get to that. But then you Kirksville, and I remember your dad always, I love your dad, by the way.
Yeah, my dad's a good man.
Hi Briddles. Your dad and your mom, of course. I've known them for years. Gary and Connie. And they were like, your dad's like just always had 100 jobs. Like, yeah. I remember you were like, there was this In Living Color skit that I used to love, and it was like the Jamaican family, and they're like, I'm the barber. I'm the shopkeeper. I have the restaurant, and I also work part-time at the DMV or like whatever it was like. And I'm like, I kind of remember this about you. What did you guys had like a striping?
Yeah. Parking lot striping. Yeah, so my dad actually was a teacher for 30 years. He was a school teacher, but then of course, we had a family of 5 total, so hard to support the whole family on a teaching salary. So my dad was very much an entrepreneur, which I feel like is where I've gotten a lot of my skills from. And so he had a used car dealership, which also was a ministry. They handed out a Bible with every sale. And so they actually provided vehicles for people he took cash. He provided vehicles to people who maybe would have never been able to afford a vehicle on their own. We also had a parking lot striping business. So when I was a teenager, I was out there getting my tan in rural Missouri, striping parking lots with a can of paint.
Which is like making the parking lot lines.
Yeah, making the parking lot lines. And then we also did window tinting. And so window tinting was actually very innovative back in the 80s. I mean, because it made it warmer in the winter, cooler in the summer.
Wow, you're a salesperson too?
I am a salesperson. So, I mean, this is where I got most of my entrepreneurial skills. And then on top of those things, my parents were always flipping houses. So in their over 50 years of marriage, they have flipped over 50 houses. So
wow,
they were moving and shaking, So
on top of that, the managing this farm.
Yeah, we had horses my whole life.
A lot of horses. And
I grew up on 27 acres and played in the pasture. I rode horses probably 5 days a week when I was little, and really developed my love of the natural world through having access to that property.
And you also played saxophone.
Mm-hmm.
When did you?
Violin.
And violin growing up.
Yeah, I started playing violin when I was 7.
7?
Yeah,
really?
Really.
What inspired you?
You know what? I don't actually know, but I would imagine my grandparents, who I was very close with, they used to take me to bluegrass festivals in Missouri.
Oh, of course that was it.
Yeah. And so
cool.
They took me to bluegrass festivals, and the story that I've heard is that I was like, hey, I want to play the violin, I want to play the fiddle. And of course my parents didn't know how to support that and the best that they could. So they put me in classical violin lessons, which also had a lot of great merits,
Basics.
So I grew up playing classical violin, and when I was in Christian school, we didn't have a band. When I was in Christian school, we had only an orchestra, and I went to Christian school until I was in 8th grade. Mm-hmm. And then when I switched to public school in 8th grade, they didn't have an orchestra, and they only had a band. And that's when I started playing saxophone.
And I read, I think maybe it was you that taught me this, that violins were actually somebody told me this at some point, that saxophones were actually created to mimic violins in a marching band setting.
Interesting.
Originally, violins and saxophones were the same player. It was like they would play the same part in the orchestra.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
In different formats. So it makes sense that you're a sax player.
Yeah.
So, great.
A little bit about me. Interesting. Digging some things out of the closet that even I forgot about.
Brockell, come on. I know you.
I forget about the puppets, which is so funny.
I love the puppets. Okay, so yeah, you're growing up there, and you went to college somewhere?
Yeah, so growing up in a small Missouri town, I wanted to get as far away from there as I could. And at that time, the farthest away my parents would let me go was Minnesota. So I moved to Minnesota. I went to school in Minneapolis and at the University of Minnesota for 1 year.
Oh.
And then, college at that point in time, I wasn't fully invested in the process, and I wanted to do other things. I wanted to travel. I wanted to explore. And my sister was living on the West Coast in Oregon, and she was having a baby.
Where?
She was living in Portland.
Okay.
And so she invited me to come out and be auntie. And so I moved to Oregon. Yeah. And that was when I was 18, 19, right after 1 year of college. So I think I was 19, and that's what took me to the West Coast. So that took me on a whole different chapter. Yeah.
And of course, I need to say this also. All your names, Brockell, Brandy, and Brady, all Briddles, all Briddle, yeah. Brockell, Brady, and Brandy Briddle. Your parents have they're so creative. I love it.
Yeah, they have a good sense of humor for sure.
So you moved to the West Coast, and then at what point when I met you, would have been 2005 or so. I know we met in Hawaii.
Yeah.
I how I met Brockell, and actually. You came along with we were touring with an opening act. Our opening act, who also performed with us, was what did they go by? Do you remember their name? They were it was Singing Bear and Dreaming Bear.
Yeah, I was gonna say Singing Bear and Dreaming Bear.
Singing Bear and Dreaming
Bear. Good friends.
They had a name for their band. I can't remember what it was, but you were just kind of tagging along with them. And I remember at first I was kind of annoyed. I was like, you guys, because we had rented this place and
I was a groupie, okay?
Well, we had rented this place and for the band, and they were just kind of like they were kind of not along for the ride, but they were kind of like an addition that I didn't really plan on. And then they were bringing another addition, and I was like, guys, come on, what the heck, man? And I remember we were playing on the Big Island one time. We were playing an acoustic show because we didn't have a sound system for some show for some reason. We played this yoga studio in Kealakekua, and it was completely okay. Well, anyways, this was a whole nother thing, but it was completely open, and I heard you singing in the front row because at this point you'd been at a few shows.
Yeah.
And I heard you singing, and I was like, wow, this girl's a really good singer.
I was like singing harmonies I remember this. I was singing harmonies to all of your music because I think at that point I'd been to many shows.
Yeah, because you were on tour with us.
Yeah, I was on tour with them for whatever reason, and that's kind of that was my entry point into the band.
And before that, we had actually met on Maui because they came to, or was that the first show?
The very first tour was,
Big
I met you
Island.
guys on the Big Island,
Okay.
and then you were going to Maui, and this is when I kind of hopped on tour, and Human wasn't really pleased about it, because you had the house that,
Right.
yeah.
With a friend, with Morningstar,
Yeah. Reno.
Rejoice. She changed her name to Rejoice.
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 Yeah.
And she needed help in her garden, and she was kind of like annoyed that I had brought so many people. Like, I was kind of like a hippie, just kind of floating. I had a whole band with me, and I don't know. There was lacking clear agreements, apparently. Those days, a lot of things were up in the air. And
We were young, what can we say?
and Brockell kind of stepped up, and she was like, I'll help you in the garden. I have gardening experience. And she just kind of like helped her redo her whole garden, and it kind of saved our relationship with her because she was kind of like on edge with us. But that was a really good that was when I got to see the real Brockell.
The real Brocky B.
And then when did you start singing with us? And
I think right after that. So 2005 or 6, we did our first acoustic tour. So it was me and you and Yelena, and we went all the way across the entire country.
Right.
And I hadn't played the violin in probably 5 years, and I was terrified. I had massive anxiety. I never thought I was good enough growing up as a classical musician. It's something I still, have a lot of work that I'm doing around it. And Human's been such a big teacher for me. And I mean, not always in the most gentle of ways, let's be honest, but
I'm not always gentle.
Really forced me to grow. I mean, he saw my talent or my ability when I was, didn't think I had any, and really encouraged me to step up into my music in that way. And that's how it all happened.
Well, I think before that, it was we did a road trip together. We were driving. You were living in Missouri. My parents were in Kansas, so we were carpooling west together. We did a road trip, and I remember you telling me that you played fiddle because I didn't know you played fiddle, and I don't remember how it happened. I think no. I remember the first thing was saxophone. You say it was fiddle.
I don't remember.
I remember saxophone. I had a saxophone in my car, and you told me you played sax. It wasn't yours. It was mine. And I was like, you play saxophone, Brockell? You were like, I haven't played in years. And I was like, Brockell, you have to play this thing. I mean, you were terrified.
I was literally terrified. I was shaking.
Brockell, I remember you shaking.
Yeah, no, I was shaking.
And I was
like
I was
convulsing.
not being gentle with you. I was being very intense. Like, no, you have to do this.
Yeah,
this
he
is
was not
important.
gentle.
But I think you needed it. And I mean, I did it. I wouldn't have done it because I was like, just for my own ego. I was doing it because I thought that's what you needed. Like, to get out of your shell and like. So anyways, it was a little tough love. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
You're
I mean, it worked out. Here we are 15,
I know.
20 years later, still playing music together. We've been on an incredible journey, I think. And I've always felt like you were my musical soulmate in a lot of ways. We sing really well together, and we've had a lot of memories throughout the last 15 years or more.
More than we can or should go into on this podcast. Yeah, and then we did that tour with Yelena, and Jen Floyd was on the tour. Then we did another Hawaii tour.
And then we did the full band. We did a couple tours of the full band.
Yeah.
Open for Willie.
Open for Willie Nelson. That would have been 2009. We got the opportunity. We opened for Willie Nelson at a Labor Day show in Benbow.
We had a lot of fun years of, doing the West Coast festival scene, playing Mystic Garden Party, Earth Dance, the whole West Coast.
I hope somebody makes a documentary about Mystic Garden Party
Fest,
one day.
That was one of my favorite things.
Fest.
Green Fest in San Francisco. We did Hempstock and
Portland.
In Portland, we did
Seattle Hemp Fest.
Hemp Fest. We were all over the West Coast.
Yeah, we really did a lot of festivals. Those
Yeah,
days.
it was a lot of fun.
One day I'm going to put it together, a whole compilation of all. I have a ton of video. I always collected videos from all the years of touring. And, you were in about 4 years of
Yeah.
me. It was like a
20-year
20-year
period, yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of stuff. But then what? But when I met you, you had been to Costa Rica. I remember
true.
that about you. You spoke Spanish, and I was like, whoa, she speaks Spanish, and she's been to Costa Rica. I had never been to Costa Rica. I'd never been outside the U.S. at this point. Did not speak any other languages, and I thought you were just as cool as could be.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, like I said, growing up in Missouri, I really wanted to know what else was out there. And so I left and moved to the West Coast, and I was working at a rafting company, actually, as training to be a whitewater raft guide. And I was living on a piece of land with a couple of other women. We called it the Butterfly Ranch, and we ran around in tie-dye skirts and spent our days like river rafting during the day and waitressing at night. And I was
Where?
at these little like cafes. It was in White Salmon, Washington. Yes,
Oh.
actually a little place called Hewsome right next to the waterfall for anybody who's familiar with it. But I worked on the White Salmon River, and I was like, I really want to leave the country, but I couldn't figure out how to do it in a way that my parents would be okay with it. And so I signed up for woofing. And so many of you might be familiar with woofing. So Willing Workers on Organic Farms.
Willing Workers on Organic Farms.
Yeah, I think they've rebranded since then. But and I found a permaculture project in Costa Rica, and this is in 2004, a long time ago.
Still here?
No, it's no longer in existence. And, it was like my ticket to exploration, and I got on a plane. I didn't speak a word of Spanish. This is way back before anybody here spoke English. It's amazing. I look at how we used to travel, and I'm like, wow. Like I pulled up. Ubito was literally just a dirt road. There was nothing there except for one soda on the corner. And I got off, and I had like this huge backpack. My dad will never forget it. He's like, I was crying. Like I had so much stuff. It was like I was heading off into the
wilderness.
wilderness. Like I had like fire starting gear.
I hope I see you one day, Mom and Dad.
No idea what I was
hope
doing.
to see you again.
Yeah. But anyway, I went and lived on this intentional community that was doing permaculture stuff, and it really just completely blew my mind. Opened me up to everything. Lived in community for the first time. Got to learn about food and learn about gardening and meet some amazing people from all over the world. Just had the full Costa Rica experience. I went to Nicaragua and I studied Spanish for like 1 or 2 months. I was here for 7 months, the very first time I ever came down. And that's what put me on this journey. Well, very much put me in a new direction in life. How I became interested in food and farming and agriculture and working with the earth in that way and living in community. And then a year later, I went back and I was working at the rafting company again, and I wanted to go somewhere else. And I went to Hawaii, and I did the same thing, and that's where I met you.
That's where I met. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Connecting all the dots.
Yeah, I've had quite the. You kind of need a whole like timeline because I've been all over, but.
Right. Yeah. And then I guess like after touring, I remember the breakup of the band. I remember there was a lot going on. It was a tough time.
It's a tough time.
You gotta have tough conversations sometimes. Things weren't working out. I don't think it was you ultimately that was like my edge. There was a lot of things happening. But anyways, that happened.
You don't think it was me?
No. It wasn't. I mean, there was a lot of aspects. Right. I was thinking, when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, I think you and I could have like gotten through it maybe, but I was a wild guy. We all were a little bit those days. Yeah. And then you kind of went and studied yoga, like yoga teacher training, right?
Yeah, so I actually did my first teacher training when I was in Hawaii, the same time I met you.
Oh.
So I had started studying yoga in the early 2000s. I was young. I was like 20, 21. And yoga really put me on this. It was part of that whole experience, right? I think what so many people have, which is food, getting in touch with your body, learning how to breathe, all those important things. And that's when I really started studying yoga. And in a lot of ways, it saved me because I had been, this very fundamentalist kind of religious experience as a young person. And I was really looking for some kind of spiritual orientation. And so when I started studying Eastern religions and I started studying yoga, it really expanded my possibility for what I thought was possible and really opened me up to a totally new direction. So I became passionate about yoga when I was pretty young, but I wasn't teaching because I was in the band and we were traveling a lot. And so it wasn't until after I left the band and I moved back to Missouri to go back to college, actually, that I started teaching. And I started teaching in my local community there and opened a small studio.
Right. Right. I remember that you opened a studio.
Yeah.
And then so now you're actually like doing yoga retreats and teaching other women how to do yoga retreats. So We want to talk a little bit about Wanderlust Women.
Sure, yeah. So Wanderlust Women is my women's travel and retreat company. And, I was fortunate enough to be mentored in the art of retreat facilitation. In 2014, I actually was invited to come to Costa Rica, and I assisted my very first yoga retreat. And at that point, I've been teaching several years, like 5 years on and off. But that moment I'll never forget, when I was in closing circle and just had this big, powerful experience, like so many people do that go on a retreat. And I realized, like, this is part of my path. Like, this is what I want to do. And I spent the next 5 years working for a company called Global Yoga Journeys. And I traveled 3 countries, co-leading retreats with my mentor. And then when he retired, I had a vision. I had recently gone through a pretty devastating marriage, divorce situation.
Right.
It was very short, and it was really devastating for me. And in that process, I came out on the other side really realizing how resilient that I am. And that really hard place had just created so much change in my life in a really positive way. And so I decided that I wanted to start a company that would inspire other women to find their most authentic expression of themselves. And so we use retreats as a tool for doing that work. So then I started my own company, Wanderlust Women, and I do transformative travel adventures right now in 3 to 4 countries a year. So I lead trips in Switzerland, Iceland, Costa Rica, the United States.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then recently I've added coaching to what I do. So I also coach female service-based entrepreneurs. A lot of them are in the wellness space, but not everyone, on how to actually incorporate retreats as a part of their business model, just because I really believe in the impact and the power of the retreat space, as well as, the profit potential. So, as a businesswoman, I think it's important to be able to sustain ourselves doing what we love, and so I teach women how to step into their power in that way and really put that logistical infrastructure in place to support them.
Just women?
Yeah, I work with exclusively women, in my coaching programs, as well as my retreats.
But men need help too.
Well, yeah, but there's other people helping men,
Is there?
Yeah,
okay.
for sure.
I might need some direction because I'm learning.
I will sit with you and talk business anytime,
okay,
friend, anytime.
Thank you.
So it's been quite an interesting journey and synthesis to really see my life, all these different pieces of my life come together in this way. Over the past, really, it was 35 when I started my first business. I'm 41 now. And it was the pandemic that really pushed me to take the leap to being fully online in the digital coaching space. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So now you're a digital nomad.
Yes.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
And you're living in
Nosara, Costa Rica.
Surfing.
I surf like 4 to 5 times a week. I love surfing. It was part of the medicine that helped me heal from my divorce and really helped me just... I don't know. It helps me become the human I want to be, spending that amount of time in the ocean as often as possible. So it's become more, honestly, in some ways, I still practice yoga, but surfing has become a big spiritual practice for me as well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What's next?
What's next?
What's next for Brockell Briddle?
Well, I've got a retreat coming up here, my annual women's retreat in Costa Rica. I do it in Alajuela. And it's the last week of January every single year. It's an annual event that I've done. It's a really, really sweet, wonderful event. And then I have a retreat coming up in, at the end of May in Iceland. So it's a women's exploration retreat where we go visit and tour the entire northern shore of Iceland. It's incredible. We do yoga every day. We have a private tour guide. We have our own bus. It's just it's epic. Iceland is like the big island of Hawaii, but in the Atlantic. It's so powerful. The whole name of it is Inspiration Iceland because it's just such an inspiring place. And then I do a women's hiking retreat in the Alps, in the Swiss Alps, in Mürren, at the end of June. So.
And where can people find these offerings?
So on Instagram, we're _Wanderlust_women. And if you want to learn about how to incorporate retreats into your life or into your business model or how to facilitate, I also do facilitation training and women's leadership trainings. And you can find me under my name, Brockell_Briddle, on Instagram as well.
It's Brockell with a B.
Yep.
Brockell Briddle.
Yeah, you can put those links.
We'll put them
below.
We'll put them in the thing.
How that works.
Well, awesome. This is very good. This is great. I feel very good. We played a show. We did a show together at a local restaurant called Buen Camino. It's been great because we haven't, after not playing music for so long together, Brockell and I have such an intuitive, relationship around music. We did it for so long.
Yeah.
You recorded on two of my albums,
Yeah.
and so you wrote the parts for some of these songs. So it's nice to have you back in the fold and
you.
playing music with you, Brockell.
It's really fun and it's really sweet. I think there's like this next decade, it's like we're all older, we have more maturity behind us, more communication skills.
Speak for yourself. I'm just kidding.
And it's just really sweet to be back. I mean, we're not back. We're in a new incarnation.
Incarnation.
And it feels really good. So I'm grateful to be here. Thanks
Excellent.
for the opportunity.
You want to play a song or two?
Sure.
Yeah,
let's do it.
All right, we're going to take a break, get set up, and then we'll be back with some music. I've been dreaming of a world that is peaceful and calm. Now I see it with my eyes, but I had to see through the lies. Now I'm seeing with my heart, and it all seems so clear. In the world I left behind, I was seeing with my fear, and I said, ooh, don't worry, there is plenty of time to do the things we need to do, and there's more than enough if we all share it, we'll share it. You just call on me, and I'll be here for you. We got sunshine and we got rain. We've got love and we've got pain. We've got spring and we've got fall, and there's a reason for it all. So know that love always prevails, and darkness always fails. Put your faith into the light if you're still caught up in the fight. And I said, ooh, don't worry, there is plenty of time to do the things we need to do, and there's more than enough if we all share it, we'll share it. You just call on me, and I'll be here for you. And when we all reach heaven, and I know we surely will, and we'll all understand why we did the things we had to do. So know that love always prevails, and darkness always fails. Put your faith into the light, you're still caught up in the fight. And I said, ooh, don't worry, there is plenty of time to do the things we need to do, and there's more than enough if we all share it, we'll share it. You just call on me, and I'll be here for you. You just call on me, and I'll be here for you. You just call on me, and I'll be here for you. You just call on me, and I'll be here for you. Ah, Brockell, so good to sing with you.
So sweet.
That was my song Love Always Prevails from the album Love Always Prevails that Brockell is featured on that album. Thanks everybody for watching. This is La Vida Verde podcast. I'm your host Matthew Human. Today my guest was Brockell Briddle. And we are going to be releasing episodes every Tuesday. We will continue to release episodes every Tuesday. We are on YouTube at La Vida Verde Podcast. You can listen to this on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. You can follow us on Instagram at Finca Vida Verde CR. We are on Facebook, Finca Vida Verde. Also, if you want some premium content, we're going to sing another song. And that will be on our Patreon, patreon.com/La Vida Verde Podcast. So you get something special. And also, it helps support the production of this podcast, which I love doing. Brockell, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Humi.
All right. Until next time.
Bye, friends.
Pura
Aloha.
vida.